The 1955 Le Mans 24-hour race was set to be a thrilling spectacle as it featured a star-studded lineup of legendary drivers such as Juan Manuel Fangio, Stirling Moss and Mike Hawthorn. What made this event truly captivating was the intense competition between three major car manufacturers, Jaguar, Ferrari and Mercedes-Benz. Jaguar was determined to win the race and regain the title they had won 2 years earlier. Ferrari, on the other hand, wanted to defend their championship. Mercedes-Benz entered the race with their brand new 300 SLR sports car, which was incredibly lightweight due to its magnesium alloy body. Alfred Neubauer, the manager of the Mercedes team, assembled a formidable lineup of drivers. He paired the talents of Fangio and Moss, two of the best in the sport, in the lead car. Carl Kling, another accomplished racer, was teamed up with Frenchman André Simon. American John Fitch partnered with Pierre Levet, a seasoned French driver renowned for his heroic drive in the 1952 race that came close to securing victory for Mercedes-Benz. The race took place on the historic Circuit de la Sarthe, a track that had seen minimal changes since its debut in 1923. Back then, cars could barely reach 60 miles per hour, but by 1955 they could hit speeds close to 170 miles per hour. What added to the circuit's complexity was the absence of barriers between the pit lane and the racing track. A mere small dirt mound was all that separated the lightning-fast cars from the spectators. While the track had undergone expansion and resurfacing after World War II and the pit lanes and grandstands had been meticulously restored, surprisingly, no modifications were made to address the barrier issue. What's truly surprising is that the cars used on that day didn't have seat belts, and there was a rationale behind this choice. Interestingly, it was the drivers themselves who opted not to use seat belts. Their belief was that in the event of an accident, being ejected from the vehicle was a safer prospect than the harrowing risk of becoming trapped inside a burning car. The race kicked off at 4 o'clock on a Saturday, and right from the start, it was brimming with excitement. Even though it was a 24-hour endurance race, both Jaguar and Mercedes were attacking it as if it were a high-speed sprint. The racetrack witnessed the legendary drivers Juan Manuel Fangio and Mike Hawthorn engaging in a fierce battle, continuously trying to outdo each other and set new lap records. However, tragedy struck during the 35th lap, just 3 hours into the race. Here's what happened. Hawthorn was locked in a battle with Fangio when he overtook another driver, Lance Macklin, driving an Austin Healey. Unfortunately, at the same time, Hawthorn received a signal to enter the pits. In a rush, he swerved across the track toward the pits, slamming on his brakes. Meanwhile, Macklin, trying to avoid a collision with Mercedes driver Pierre Levet, veered to the right. Tragically, he later re-entered the track, colliding with Levet. At a staggering 150 miles per hour, Levet's Mercedes was sent airborne and crashed off the track, hitting a bank and disintegrating upon impact. Levet himself was thrown back onto the track, losing his life instantly. Pieces of the car, including the engine block, were flung into the crowd, causing unimaginable chaos among the spectators. Remarkably, amid the unfolding tragedy, a significant number of race spectators remained oblivious to the horrifying events that had just transpired. What makes this even more startling is the fact that the race authorities made the challenging decision not to halt the event, a choice that may appear callous at first glance but was motivated by a compelling rationale. They feared that announcing the accident could trigger widespread panic among the spectators, potentially flooding the streets and making crowd control nearly impossible. Such a scenario could have also hampered rescue efforts, compounding the catastrophe. At the scene of the tragic incident, a scene of both chaos and compassion unfolded. Spectators rallied to help, using advertising banners as makeshift stretchers to transport the injured and the deceased. Amid the commotion, people desperately searched for their loved ones. Now, in the midst of this turmoil, a priest moved slowly among the injured and dying, offering them the last sacrament, a final spiritual comfort. Volunteers, who were deeply saddened by the situation, improvised with whatever materials they could find, using newspapers and torn clothing to gently cover the victims' lifeless bodies. Some even utilized the banners not only to transport, but also to shield the deceased from view out of respect for the fallen. The toll of this horrifying accident was nothing short of devastating. Initially, reports suggested that 58 men, 15 women, and 6 children had tragically lost their lives. However, as further investigations unfolded, a much grimmer reality emerged, with an additional 5 casualties coming to light later on. In addition to the staggering loss of life, approximately 170 people suffered injuries of varying degrees, revealing the full extent of the human tragedy that unfolded on that fateful day. In the aftermath of this tragic incident, the decisions made by those involved were a blend of boldness and controversy. John Fitch, who was Pierre Levé's co-driver and a witness to the catastrophe, strongly urged Mercedes to withdraw from the race. Fitch believed that the public relations fallout of a German company, seeming indifferent to the French tragedy just a decade after World War II, would be nothing short of catastrophic. However, the decision had to be made at the highest level, and it wasn't until nearly midnight, after securing approval from every company director, that Mercedes received permission to exit the competition. Now, at 1:45 in the morning, with the audience at its sparsest, Mercedes quietly pulled their remaining vehicles from the race, relinquishing their first and third positions. During this tumultuous time, a seasoned member of the Mercedes crew proposed a unity gesture to Jaguar, suggesting they also withdraw from the race. However, Jaguar's leader, Lofty England, known for his assertive demeanour, declined the offer, choosing to continue racing. The response from England and the Le Mans organisers seemed surprisingly indifferent, given the gravity of the situation. As the race continued, the Jaguar team, led by the determined Mike Hawthorn, continued their pursuit of victory. Their main competitors, Mercedes and Ferrari, were no longer in contention. Mercedes had withdrawn, and Ferrari faced mechanical issues, sidelining their cars. This left Hawthorn and his co-driver Iver Bueb with a significant lead of 5 laps over the Aston Martin team. Mike Hawthorn went on to secure victory in the race. However, it was a photograph taken on the winner's podium that would go down in history as iconic. In the image, Hawthorn stood with a triumphant grin, clutching a bottle of champagne. This moment didn't sit well with many, as they had expected a more somber expression from Hawthorn. After all, something tragic had occurred during the race, resulting in the loss of many lives. The aftermath of the event was marked by a prolonged search for blame, extending for months and even years. Official investigations ultimately exonerated the drivers from any wrongdoing and instead pointed to the racetrack's unsuitability for high-speed racing as the primary cause of the accident. Yet, even after the investigations had cleared the air, the blame game persisted within the sports community. Some, like Lance Macklin, continued to point fingers at Mike Hawthorn, insisting that he should be held accountable for the disaster. There were even rumours that Hawthorn had tearfully admitted his involvement immediately after the incident, but later he denied any responsibility. On the other side of the debate, supporters of Hawthorn and Jaguar argued that both Macklin and the experienced Levée should have taken measures to avoid the crash, making it a contentious and divisive issue within the racing community. In 1958, Hawthorn published his autobiography, reiterating his innocence. This fueled further discord, with Macklin filing a libel lawsuit against Hawthorn, believing he was being directly implicated. Tragically, before the claim could be settled, Hawthorn lost his life in a car accident while driving his Jaguar on a rainy day in January 1959. Strangely, he was passing a Mercedes at the moment of his demise. The following year, the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, ACO, embarked on a significant transformation of the Circuit de la Sarthe. They undertook various track modifications and infrastructure enhancements to enhance safety and the overall racing experience. One notable change was the reconfiguration and widening of the pit straight. This alteration removed a tricky kink just before the start-finish line and created space for a deceleration lane. Simultaneously, the pit's complex underwent demolition and reconstruction, providing more room for teams, even though the number of available starting positions decreased from 60 to 52. The grandstand was also revamped, featuring new spectator terraces and a substantial ditch that separated spectators from the racetrack. Advancements in track safety were gradual, until Formula One driver Jackie Stewart launched a passionate campaign for stronger safety measures a decade later. Following tragic incidents involving Lorenzo Bandini and Jim Clark, Stewart's advocacy gained momentum. Now, after the 1955 Le Mans 24-hour race tragedy, Several European countries temporarily banned motor racing until stricter safety regulations were put in place. Switzerland banned circuit racing until 2007. Some drivers, including Macklin and John Fitch, decided to retire from racing after the season. Even racing legend Juan Manuel Fangio never returned to compete at Le Mans, and Mercedes-Benz withdrew from motorsport until 1987. Now, after hearing all this, what are your reflections on this tragic race? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below.